Thank you, Penny Bodner, for arranging for me to be here, and a special thank you to Chesky and Naomi Neiman for opening up your home and your deck, your garden, to us all here. You should only know Simachat in your home. Amen. I've been asked to speak for 10 minutes, so it's going to be 8 minutes more than I've been announced. I hope that's you've got enough to appetize you. Bani matem Hashem Elokeichem. Hashem describes us as His children, and we're all responsible for each other. But it's interesting that it's not till fairly recently, I would say, that we have a better understanding what does it mean to reach out to different types of children. So I'm going to ask you, if you had to select one verse anywhere in the Torah, Tanakh, that is the mission statement of chinuch. I'm going to incorrectly translate that word as education. Which one verse would you say is the mission statement of the Torah that encapsulates, is the mission statement of chinuch? Any suggestions? For those still awake. Hanuch lenar al pidarkai. I think that would probably be close to the top of the list, if not the number one. But it's interesting, the word chinuch, how does that correctly translate? I know we translate it according to King James Bible as educate, but according to Chazal, what does chinuch actually mean? Inaugurate, to initiate. Chanukas Abayis, when we start something. Chanichav, in the description of the trained soldiers of Avram Avinu when he went to war to save light. Chanichav is trained soldiers. So chinuch actually has three meanings. We've seen two. Number one, it means initiation, as in Chanukas Abayis, Chanukas HaMizbeach, when you start something. It also means training, which is an interesting, because that's further along down the process. After I've initiated a child in Aleph Base, after I've initiated the marriage, we've started the marriage, and the hardest part is staying married. After I've lost weight, and the hardest part is staying with that loss. Whatever it is that we initiate, the process is always much harder. And chinuch also means that process. It's a training, a regilus. But the two-letter root of chinuch is chen. What does chen mean? Grace. Chen is grace. That's the correct translation in King James's Bible. What does chen mean? Lefi Chazal. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu first used the word chen, it's in description of Noach. When Noach matzah chen, what does chen mean? So we translate it as grace, favor, but what does that mean? So the Stipler has the following explanation. I heard from Rabbi Dr. Greenwald, who heard it from the Stipler, when they wrote a sefer together, Eitzes V'Adrochas. So he explained that chen is a kesher she'eino nireh. It's an invisible connection between the person who is either the parent or the teacher, and the receiver of that connection, which is the child, the student. A mechanech does not mean educator. The word chen means connection. And what is this invisible connection? If it's invisible, how does that help us? Because chinuch means, how do I feel internally, and what am I thinking in my mind about this child? Do I judge this child based on their appearance? Do I judge this child based on their performance, academic ability, analytical ability, short, long-term memory? Or is my connection to this child deeper than the apparent performance on the outside? Chen means a connection, a kesher she'eino nireh. It starts with the face, because that's where we initially make a connection with another person. The smile that reflects the panim, and panim. But the real connection is, what am I thinking and feeling about this child? And therefore, a mechanech does not really mean educator. It means a connector. And I, as a parent or a teacher, when I have kas halev, I'm angry internally, not kas apanim, which is permitted if I don't feel it. If I'm angry internally with my child, with my student, I am right now not a mechanech, I am a disconnector. I am losing the connection with that child. If I'm not willing to understand what that child is struggling with in order to perform and get even the simple mark that they are getting on their report card, if I'm going to judge that kid for the 26 out of 100, is that what you got? Yeah, Dad. That's 8 levels below pathetic. I'm sorry, Dad. I failed chemistry again. Listen, son, I've told you before, you've got to be positive in life. Dad, I'm positive I failed chemistry. Look, son, 26 out of 100. Let me understand. You know what? If you just score like a 51 and get a pass mark, you'll make me so proud. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. If I'm not willing to ask a more intelligent question, son, what does 26 out of 100 reflect? Is that your best? Did you really try? Does it reflect having missed school for a few days and you fell behind? Is it a reflection of laziness? Is it a reflection you don't understand the class? You have a disconnect with the teacher, with the Murrah, with the Rabbi? Or maybe someone teased you at the beginning of school, true story. Kids laughed at the joke and so did the teacher. And from that moment, this was his favorite subject. He disconnected with that teacher for the rest of the year. Because the teacher, on his cheshbon, laughed, and that gave license to the children to make fun of him the rest of the class for the entire year. So, machanech, chinuch means connection. Hanach lenar al pidarkai. Interesting. If I take Shlomo HaMelech at face value, the wisest of all men, imbued with Ruach HaKodesh, not less, then what I'm being told is I can't even start the connection, the chinuch part of the pasuk, until I've identified darkai. What's the child's way? Apparently, the verse is demonstrating that children don't receive, connect, understand the same way. So what is darkai? What is his way? Now we are privileged to understand, thanks to different technologies in psychology especially, that enable us to, I think, open our minds to the fact that the educational system, by and large, and I'm speaking mostly in the secular world, but sadly I think it's seeped into our system as well. The educational system, by and large, has reduced itself to one definition of intelligence. Academic intelligence, IQ, intelligence quota, analytical ability, one's ability to articulate one's position perhaps superior to another person, another student, a peer. But in reality, there's more than one intelligence. In the world of Dr. Gardner and Daniel Goleman, who've really popularized the idea, the concept, the theory, and now a practice, that there really is multiple intelligences. And that children, as adults, don't have one type of intelligence, but actually several. About 7, maybe 8, some machlokas. And every one of us are born with different levels of each of these intelligences. And Al Pi Darkai dictates that if I know your strength, I can teach any subject in your strength. Example, there's spatial intelligence. Spatial intelligence refers to acute awareness. Those are the 2 key words. Acute awareness of space. A child who has spatial intelligence means he has a very good eye for height, breadth, depth, color, contrast. Usually architects, artists are spatially intelligent. You have mathematical intelligence. A child who's very good with numbers, sequencing, patterns. Accountants are typically math intelligence. You have language intelligence, one of my favorites. Language intelligence, very interestingly, has nothing to do with grammar or spelling. It has an acute awareness. A child who is language intelligent can be failing English, 0, and yet be gifted in language. How's that possible? Because it has nothing to do with comprehension of the language in terms of grammar and spelling. It's an acute awareness of words and their multiple meanings. Street smart children are usually language intelligent. You have salespeople, if they're good, they're language intelligent. Teachers who are good teachers are language intelligent. They have a command of words and their multiple meanings and are able to communicate their ideas in a clear way so that the receiver, child, student, understands very well. That's language intelligence. But children are not usually being rated for their language intelligence. They're being rated on spelling and grammar and comprehension of literature. And yet in the real world, we discover that of all the different types of intelligence, you've got musical intelligence, acute awareness of beat, rhythm, sound. You have emotional intelligence, which is the one that really wins in the real world of marriage, the real world of raising children, the real world of earning a living. In the real world, which is going to count the most? How many letters at the end of my name? Which yeshivas I went to? Which universities I graduated? My position in the corporate world? My salary? The car I drive? What's going to count the most? Mathematical intelligence? IQ, analytical ability? Short, long-term memory? What's going to count the most? Spatial intelligence? Kinesthetic intelligence? That's hand, leg, body coordination. Athletes are kinesthetically intelligent. What's going to count the most out of all those? Let's look at emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is responsible for acute awareness of other people's body language, facial expression, tone of voice, body language. And a child or adult who picks up quickly on reading other people's faces, a sibling, a parent, a teacher, a peer, reads their body language quickly and is sensitive to a switch in the language. Parent, child, aunt, their smile suddenly disappears. And the child picks up, oh, there's something is bothering mum, something's bothering dad, the mirror, the teacher. Emotional intelligence is acute awareness of other people's body language, tone of voice. And then there's another dimension to emotional intelligence known as intrapersonal intelligence, in reference to one's own acute awareness of one's feelings and thoughts. A child who's emotionally intelligent is the one that's usually most popular in the classroom. He may be failing a lot of the subjects, even be academically useless, according to IQ, and yet be successful in relationships, holding on to friendships, getting along with others, cooperating, being sensitive, understanding, compassionate, because that's under the umbrella of emotional intelligence. In Orvadas, I'm working, I know I'm better known as a public speaker, but my actual forte, believe it or not, is working with children. I've been doing it for 25 years. Working with children with learning disabilities and, on the other end of the spectrum, gifted children. I've never actually met a child that's not gifted. Because once we know there are at least 7 types of gifts, types of intelligence, then it's only a matter of identifying which is this child's 1 or 2 or 3 strengths that they excel in, and that with that we can probably teach almost any, or literally any subject, al pi darkoi. Orvadas is all about identifying a population that in the academic world simply didn't count. And it's relatively recent, in the last few decades, that special education recognizes that there's a serious population of children that will not succeed in the regular system because it's simply not catering to their other types of abilities. And in that sense, Banim Atem, we are all Hashem's children. And in the words of Mesilas Yesharim, which asks, who does God love more out of all his children? Which is a dangerous question to answer. But he answers with a mashal. Imagine you have a number of brothers who are busy with their lives. Who does the father love? Who is he more endeared to out of all his sons? From all his sons, who is he more endeared to? So says the Mesilas Yesharim that the son that is worrying about his other brothers, even if he has less contact with dad than the other brothers, but he's more Isaac, he's more busy, occupied in trying to figure out what are the needs of my brothers. I ask you, we're all fathers here. Who are we more endeared to? The kid that calls home more frequently, is mechaber us physically, or ultimately the one that's trying to make shalom to fill in the needs of his siblings? That's the power of endearment that we have in supporting a moised that is, if you like, in a certain sense, on the fringe, and only recently got legitimacy as a moised, because these children are not seen in the conventional sense as intelligent. I close, and I truly mean it. What's God's delivery system for chinuch? We've described chinuch as connecting. I've got to feel, what is it that I'm thinking and feeling towards this child? Do I need to make a switch in my attitude, perception, to my own child, my own student? And that's where I can reconnect. And we've discussed darkai. This child really does have strengths. That if I can help the child excel in his strengths, her strengths, they can feel good about themselves, and perhaps that spillover can affect their performance in other areas too. But what's the delivery system for me to connect to my child? So the Torah doesn't leave us on a limb. Not only does it provide us a delivery system, it is so acutely pronounced, it is literally in our daily prayers, even though it's a part of a mitzvah deoraisa, v'shinantam levanecha. It's in the Shema Yisrael. There's a 6-point plan for parenting. We're not going to go through it in detail. We're just going to cover it very quickly. Shema Yisrael is a mission statement that I love you, Hashem, no matter what. You're the one power behind everything that happens in my life. And I will love you no matter what. B'chol levavcha, with all my thoughts. B'chol nafshecha, with my entire life. Even when I die, I'm going to go saying I love you. I practice every morning, every night, saying, God, when I die, when you take my soul, I'm going to love you. Uv'chol me'odecha, with all my ma'od. Shalach Kodesh says, ma'od is a oishes adam. With all that you've created me. Ma'od, b'chol ma'moinecha, with all my possessions. My money that you've blessed me with. 10 lay mishalai. Give to God from what He's given to me. Because everything I've got is His anyway. Whatever measure of blessing or not that God measures out to me, I have an obligation to be grateful. That's the mission statement. What's the delivery system? All these words should be on my mind. And what's next? V'shinantam levanecha, which correctly translates as chew to your children. Shein means tooth. V'shinantam, chew, repeat. V'shinantam. The tooth does the action of repeating. There's no word in the Torah for teaching. Very interesting. It's a Christian translation. V'limadtim oisam means to cause the child to teach himself. So we're not going there right now. V'shinantam means to chew to our children. What do you mean chew to your children? How does our wife actually know we enjoy her cooking? Option 1, darling, this is delicious. This is really, really good. I'll take a second helping. That might be a proof. Here's a second option. Why is it that the proof of the pudding is in the eating? In England, the proof of the cake is in the eating. Why? Why? Because how do you really know if someone savors what they experience? Look at their body language. See how they feel. The shinantam levanecha, how do I bench? How do I learn with my child? How do I go to minyan or not go to minyan? How do I go to learning or not? How do I embrace a difference between my spouse and myself? How do I respond when I'm provoked by this kid in front of the rest of my children? How am I, who am I in front of my child? V'shinantam levanecha, chew the mitzvahs. How do I respond to adversity? Do I still love Hashem, or am I complaining about my spouse and my mother-in-law? Sorry, just swallowing. My father, my brother, my sister. How do I respond to differences in my life? How do I speak to my kids? Do I speak down to them? In which case the Torah should have said v'dibata lahem, but it doesn't say that. It says v'dibata bam. Speak with them. Oh, we're lifting them up to us. Do we bring our world into their life? Do I not speak about the birds and the bees till they're 14, 15, 16, when they've already got it from the street? Or do I share with them the adult world before they get it from a roommate who I have no control as to how their perception of intimacy is in their mind? Had a kid once sitting on his father's lap. The father said, his son, his 9-year-old boy, I really have to talk to you. He's going to give him a talk about birds and bees. Son, this is it's like a man-to-man. It's a thing that only a father can really have. I've got to talk to you about a very important subject. It's, how do I put it? It's serious, and it's taking 10 minutes to get the introduction. Finally comes out of his mouth. Son, we've got to talk about the birds and the bees. So boy says, sure, Dad, what do you want to know? If we don't get to our kids before the street does, then v'dibartabam, I've got to bring them into my world, explain to them how finances work. And the place, the delivery system for this is in my home. How I live in my home, how I live outside my home. How do I go to bed at night? Do I go to minyan? Do I go to shir? What are we going on Sunday morning? We're doing chesed for another yeshiva that maybe we don't even have children at. How do we spend our time outside of the home, in front of our children? That is our commercial. Uvkumecha, how do we get up in the morning? How do we daven? With hislavus, passion for the mitzvahs, with gratitude. Uvkumecha, how do we get up from difficulty, from adversity, in front of our children? Our bracha is that Orva Das should be supported in all its needs, and Hashem should shine upon us in the same way that we are endearing ourselves to Him by taking care of His children. He should take care of us. Thank you for your patience. Amen.